clears up, his king could be a little vulnerable. He's got to move twice before he can castle. And he's got to do it a little bit awkwardly. He can move his bishop out here and then his knight to here. If he moves his knight over here, then the bishop's going to be hemmed in. So it's going to be a couple of moves before he can castle on the king side. And if he castles on the queen side, boy, that's dangerous with really no pawn support anywhere near the king. There'd be really too much air over here if I ever eventually developed a counterattack. He plays bishop e2. Again, really hemming in that knight, not allowing it to develop to its natural square. It can only develop to the h-file over here if he wants to castle. Then I played bishop a takes b5. He plays a takes b5 as well. I traded off the rooks. Again, that's the reason why I took this in the first place. The reason why I took the pawn is because I wanted to trade off the rooks while I could still not cede control of this file. Because I realized if he puts his knight out, let's say, and then castles, then eventually, if I trade off the rooks, he's going to have control of the h-file. And it's really not going to be easy for me to regain control. Because obviously I couldn't regain control with my queen, because you don't want to trade a queen for a rook. I'd have to regain control with the rook. It really wouldn't be that easy right now to get the other rook all the way onto this file. So I wanted to trade off that file before he has a chance to castle and gain control of the file. So I played a takes b5, a takes b5, rook takes a1 check, bishop takes a1. Okay. Now I've got to start worrying about getting to this h-file before he gets to the h-file. So I played c6. Again, hoping, let's say, to trade it off. If he trades it off, I'd probably take it with the pawn. I mean, I could take it with the knight, the bishop, or the pawn, but I wouldn't want to have an isolated b pawn over here. So I'd probably take it with the pawn, and his queen side pawn majority really wouldn't be much then. If this and this pawn, for example, the b pawns in essence get traded off for each other, then this c5 pawn is his most advanced pawn, and he really doesn't have much of an attack. Remember, with black, I usually look for defense first, look to try to go into the endgame with roughly an equal position, and then try to outplay the opponent in the endgame. Depending on the position, obviously, I'm not that interested in going for the massive attack so early with black. But again, I'm happy with my position. I like this diagonal that the queen can come out to, and so he forecloses on that. What does he play? He plays b6. Now, that does a few things. It gives him tremendous space on the queen side. It hems in my queen. My queen's got to get out some other way. It can't get out this direction, obviously. And it really gives me a difficult time getting my queen to the a-file over here. So I played my bishop out, bishop f5. Again, this square, first of all, I'm trying to overload on this square. I've got a rook on this file. If that eventually comes to pass, he can play. I'm trying to prevent him from playing e5. E4. If he plays e4 now, then I can take. He takes, and then I take. So he can't do that. He's only got two pieces defending this square. So I want to try to expand in the middle over here. He plays his bishop d3. He realizes that. He realizes that this e4 square can be critical later, so he wants to try to make sure that I don't have the advantage piling up on that square. I traded off the bishops over here. Again, there's really not a lot I can do with the bishop that would be productive. I can put it over here. I mean, what other options do I have? I don't want to just leave it there and let the bishop trade off, because then I have to take with my c-pawn, and once I take with my c-pawn, I've doubled up the pawns in the c-file. I've got an isolated a-pawn. My king could be a little exposed over here. I'm not really interested in doing that. So where else can I move my bishop to? I can move my bishop back to where it started, but then I've just lost tempo for nothing. I can move the bishop to d6. I'm to e6, but if and then that has the advantage of getting it on the same diagonal as the queen, which is always a good idea, because if things clear up, he's the one that's going to have to cede the diagonal. But then I hem in my e-pawn. My e-pawn can't move as long as the bishop is there, and in general, I get a little bit more of a cramped position. So I don't really have much of a choice, so I trade off the bishops. He takes it with the queen. Queen takes d3. Now I played knight a6. Now the reason for that is very simple. There's not really a whole lot else that knight can do. First of all, it allows me to gain control of the a-file much easier. I can put my queen here, or if my queen moves, I can put the rook there. And I was worried a few minutes ago about the a-file. it's pretty clear as of now that he's certainly not going to have control of the A file. I might not. I might move my queen over there. I might move my rook over there, but he's certainly not going to have control. And even though normally the general rule is you don't want to put your knight on the rim, as I mentioned before, you don't want to put your knight on the A or the H file. First of all, this is reasonably late in the game. That rule is more like an early game type of rule where there's a lot of pieces and the knight can dominate. Here, with several of the pieces off the board, each of us has a rook off, each of us has a minor piece off. So I don't mind the rook so much there. Also, another important thing, and this is really the main reason why I put the knight over here, it's protected by the pawn, it's in a nice spot, is that I'm aiming at this pawn. Now, at this point, this pawn is protected. But eventually, once I've opened up the middle, which I pretty much have over here, maybe with a couple of preparation moves, I'm planning on pushing the e-pawn. Because once I try to push the e-pawn, I want to try to break down this structure. This looks like a very impressive wall over here with the dark squared pawns over here. But once I can start hitting at the base of this structure, these pawns can become tremendous weaknesses. And hitting at this pawn, hitting at the c-pawn over here is something that I figured would help me later on. He plays queen c3. Again, maybe preventing my knight from coming in here. What else could that do? I don't really. He puts the knight on the same position. Oh, okay. Probably what he's doing also is, creating a battery of his queen and his bishop, so that if this ever clears up somehow, let's say, for example, if this knight was out and the pawn managed to move with tempo, then he would have a threatened checkmate. And to get the queen into a slightly more active position over here, I played queen a8. Again, I'm trying to take control of the h-file. He's got to be careful about that bishop over there, although it's not hanging, it's protected by the queen. But still, if this knight moves ever, then I'm going to have control of the a-file. Right now, the knight really can't move. Moves back here, it cuts off the rook. Moves back here, it's taken. Moves here, it's taken. So, moves here, it's taken. So the knight is really trapped over here. But, I want to get control of that h-file in the event that the knight does eventually move. He plays knight e2, developing his knight. Again, he doesn't want to develop it to the outside, mainly in this position because the action's all on the queen side. And the more toward the center he can develop, the quicker he can get to the queen side. Obviously, he's planning on castling. I played knight d7. Again, a few things. Number one, opening this diagonal so that this pawn, you see what I'm threatening over here, obviously. I'm threatening either one of these knights take this pawn, and he can't take back because the bishop is pinned, the pawn is pinned against the queen. I'm double attacking this so that even when and if he does move the queen from this diagonal, if this pawn ever leaves, I can always take this pawn. Then he castles. So I wonder why I didn't take knight takes pawn. 1 second. So I play that. Something I missed. All right, look, this is a blitz game. I guess when you analyze it, you see some things that you missed. So I could have played either one of these knights take this pawn, and this pawn was pinned, so he couldn't retake it. Obviously, the queen couldn't take it because the knights would protect each other. All right, I could have played that. I didn't. I played e5 instead. Again, aiming at the not quite the base of the pawn chain, but pretty close to the base of the pawn chain. Now he moves his queen away. So now, obviously, that idea that of taking this pawn because this pawn was pinned it doesn't apply anymore. I'm sure that's the reason why he did that. He didn't want the bishop to be in the same